Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with...
Rob H. This is AV Rant. This is the show where we answer your questions about all things home theater and audio video. And if last week was the show where everybody had a broken product, then this is like the feedback show. That seems to be the theme for this week. Not as many questions, although still some great ones, but lots and lots of feedback, but still things to discuss. So
Feedback's
looking
good.
forward to. Mm-hmm.
I had a moment last night at about 1:30 a.m. that I think sort of sums up why it sometimes sucks to care so much about audio. So I was in my home theater. It was about 1:30. I was getting sleepy. It was about time for me to turn everything off and go to bed. And I heard the sound coming from my right. It was like,
Yes.
like that. It was just a sort of weird kind of
Hmm.
chirping sound.
And not like regular intervals, kind
No,
of.
not regular intervals. It was like two at a time and then one, then two at a time, and there would be like some
Mm.
space. It was very odd. So I was like, is that coming from my left speaker? So I pressed pause.
Okay.
Okay, so I was rewatching Agents of Shield on Netflix. So I pressed pause and I looked up at my speaker and no, it was still happening. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, well maybe it's at the receiver. So I went over and turned off the receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, still happening. Turned the receiver back on, went over to the speaker. I'm like, oh, now that I'm at the speaker, it sort of sounds like it's coming from a projector. So I
Oh.
went over to the projector and I was like, okay, no, it's not coming from the projector. It's now sounds like it's coming back from that direction. Maybe it's coming from the window. So I went over to the window and no, it didn't sound like it was coming from the window. I'm like, well, maybe it's coming from the light, the ceiling fan's on. So I'll go turn that off. I turned the ceiling fan off and the internet went down.
Buh.
But the chirping still was going on, right? So I'm looking up at
Okay.
I'm looking up and Netflix is gone. I mean, like the second I turn that switch off, and it's not
Oh.
connected to anything remotely resembling the router, right? So there's no
Uh-huh.
reason why like I even checked my little extender box. My extender box is still looking fine, so I was the lights on and stuff like that. But Xbox Live or whatever says we've lost internet connection. Check your internet connection.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
like, all right, I can't deal with that. I shut everything down.
Okay.
Still hearing the chirping.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
all right, so it's not the gear.
It's an
Maybe it's coming
animal.
from outside. Exactly. So maybe it's coming from outside. So I go outside, and as I'm walking around the house, I'm hearing what sounds like rustling in like the leaves like near my house. I'm like walking down across the along the side of the house, but closer to right next to the house, like to my side. I,
Hmm.
I feel like something's following me. Like I'm hearing this rustling in the leaves. I'm like, what the heck is going on out here today? So I'm kind of freaking out a little bit at this point.
Hmm.
I get around to the side of the house and there's no chirping over there. So I come back around and I realize that sound wasn't actually following me. It was kind of dispersed, and it wasn't so much leaves rustling as it sounded like water. I'm like,
This is
okay,
like how an episode of Supernatural starts, right?
exactly,
Like
right. That's exactly
it's
what I'm thinking.
like the camera moved over to the left and there's a blood splatter against the wall. The next thing we know, like
Yeah. So I go inside, I go get a flashlight, I come back outside, and there are two spots, not directly underneath the eave of the house, just two spots that are getting rained on, like literally
okay.
like 6-inch spots, and there's like rain coming down just in those spots, but no place else. And I'm looking all now. I have a lot of big trees in my backyard, so I'm looking around.
Mm.
There's no water anywhere. I'm like, wait a second. I go out into the front yard, and sure enough, it had rain. So whatever was happening up in the rain, it all filtered to two spots in our trees, and it was falling in these two spots. That mystery solved. Go back into the home theater. Still have chirping going on. Like, okay, let me take a look at this internet thing before I freak out about this light switch. So I go out, and my router is showing that it's lost connection to the internet. Bright House occasionally around 1:32 a.m. decides
Right.
that they're going to do some sort of maintenance, and the whole internet goes down for a while. And F you if you are somebody who wanted to watch TV really late that night. And so I'm like, okay. So I come back in here. I'm like, okay, let's just retrace our steps. Let's go over here and listen to the window. It's not coming from the window, it's inside the room. Listen to the light. It's not the light, but it's really. And I look down, and I have been drinking from one of those sports bottles,
Oh no.
and I had squeezed it to get the last of the water out, and it had created a vacuum, and it was slowly sucking water back in, air back into the bottle. Right. So I take the top and I open it. It goes, and that's the end of the chirp. I'm like, It is 2 o'clock in the dang morning. It is 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm all amped up. I think there's some sort of supernatural thing going on outside and follow me and trying to kill me. You know, the internet's down. There's weird noises going on. What? And that was my night. Like I was like, okay, now I have to find some way else to fall asleep. I was all amped up, so I was up for like another half an hour trying to get relaxed again. All
So in
because
other
of a
words,
stupid water bottle.
If your kids ever wanted to just drive you utterly insane, they could just like drop a couple pop rocks in an open like cup of water. That would be like the end of Tom thing.
Hide it behind the couch.
Not that I absolutely cannot sympathize, because I am also the person who will notice some tiny little sound and worry that it's part of my system.
And then everything's got to be checked. I'm like, what is that?
Go searching for it. But I mean, we all realize that like everyone else in the world is just like, what sound? Yeah. What are you talking about?
It was seriously freaking me out. I was like, I got a short someplace. There's something wrong with the receiver. You know, maybe there's something. Maybe there's a wire. You know, my kids are evil, so God knows, maybe they put a nail someplace.
Well, we did just have an entire show of like nothing but products breaking last week, so it's like in your mind.
So it was. So now I'm tired and cranky.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's why you're tired this week. There must always be a new reason for the tired Tom.
And I do have to get up early again tomorrow, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, man.
Anywho, so this is the AV Podcast, where we answer your home theater and audio visual questions. So to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing rob@avrant.com, tom @avrant.com. Come to the website, www.avrant.com, and comment there, or facebook.com/avrantpodcast. That's all one word. You can catch us on Twitter at @FirstReflectForRob or at @avrant_Tom for me. There's also G+, and you just look us up by name or something. Are you Rob H on G+, or are you First Reflect?
He doesn't even know. No idea.
It's not even.
I think I have both, but there's no way to just get like the name Rob H as a slash like google.com/+ Rob H. There's no way that would happen. So that account is like a string of random letters and numbers, and then /+ First Reflect is me, but I never log into that account. So good luck getting me on Google+. That's what I'm saying. Just use my email.
I answer people on Google+, so it's stranger things have happened. All right. We have some listeners of the week. This week we got Jason to thank for. I was not tired and cranky. I was just busy and I didn't get around to it. Jason, we have to thank Jason for, apparently we have to thank him for pestering a tired and cranky Tom. According to what it says right here, the posting last week's episode. I posted it. Busy.
Stranger things have happened. Thank you for pestering him, Jason. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Anyways, we also want to thank Cesar and Lior for giving us a donation. They did that by going to our website, www.avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and leaving us a little PayPal donation. And that's always very helpful. Use that to support the podcast, and eventually, maybe someday, buy something that would make me look, I don't know, I'm going to stand in, but at least clearer. I mean, I can't be any prettier. Clearer, less of glamour shots, kind of soft focus sort of thing going on. So, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, we did actually get a couple more donations, I think just today.
Yeah, we'll talk about. We'll thank you guys next week.
We'll thank them next week. Yeah, because we sort of cut things off as far as whatever has reached us by Monday night. That's what will make it onto this week's mention list. Yes. And then everything that comes in on Tuesday now is pushed to the next week.
Push to the next day.
Our schedules are working these days.
Prep. All right. There's some news here. I don't care about any of that crap. Okay. Let's get right to the questions and comments. The news is, who cares about Comcast? No one cares. And the laser projectors bore me. So
there it is. That was it. Headlines read. On we go. How can laser projectors bore you, dude? How is that possible?
I just don't. Yeah.
Lasers.
They are lasers. All right, Tim. Tim wrote us a while back. These are questions from last week that we didn't get to. Wrote us a while back to start planning updates to this 90s home theater. I think that means everything in there was from the 90s. So it was upgrading it all. He has started with a 70-inch TV. Now he's looking to do some drywall repairs. While he's at it, he would like to wire for 2 subwoofers, but he isn't sure of the best positions. He sends a diagram. He'd like the subwoofers to be either out of sight or serve a useful purpose, like acting as end tables. Just for information, there is no space under the stairway at the back of the room, and there's a wall beneath. There's a wall beneath the stairway. So is that where he puts Harry Potter?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes there is a gap underneath stairways. So in the past, we've recommended you can do a middle of the front wall, middle of the back wall, including sticking it in a cubby type space, like perhaps under a stairway. But he's saying, nope, that will not happen in his room. For there is no.
I kind of wonder if that stairway, which direction it goes.
I'm pretty darn sure. Now we're looking at the diagram, which is sort of a rectangular room. About 26 feet long and about a little over 13 feet wide, but it's got sort of like cutouts and jut outs and a stairway at the back. So it's not exactly a rectangle, but it's more or less rectangular. And then in the diagram at the back of the room, there is a stairway, which, if the diagram is accurate, I'm assuming the top of the image is the bottom of the stairway. Otherwise, there is no room to like make a turn.
Yeah, I'm thinking
it's going the other way. Yeah.
So what he's got is the front. He's got his speakers in the left and right corners. He's got, well, I'm guessing, is that 70-inch TV on some sort of console. His couch is actually offset to one side. It's pushed up against the wall, and on the right wall, it's pushed right up to the right wall, and it's
more or less centered as far as the front to back length of the room goes.
Yes, that's it's right in the middle of the room. That's right, front to back. So between unless you, well, even with that stairway, it's pretty much it's pretty much in the middle. Behind that, there's like a little cutout, and there's a desk back there, and it looks like there might be a recliner off to the left of the couch. So
it is a tricky one. Now, I mean, my very first instinct on this is to say, if there is any way of doing center of the front wall more or less center of the back wall, it would be, adjacent to the stairway, since it can't go under the stairway. But that would be, as far as the acoustics of this room go, about as good as you could get, because that would avoid certainly standing waves in at least one direction. I'm probably more worried about the side-to-side reflections and setting up a standing wave in that direction, but there's really no way to put a subwoofer beside his seat. His couch, and that is more or less at the center of the room already. So that doesn't exactly meet his criteria of being out of sight, and it would be in front of that stairway.
Wants to put them is in the, like, sort of, this is what I understand. He wants to kind of tuck one by that desk, which is right next to where we think the stairway enters the room, which means you have to walk right by it, which doesn't exactly sit out of sight. Unless he's getting small cubes, which I guess is theoretically possible. In this room, it's going to be... and the other one he wants to put like next to his couch behind his recliner. So...
Which would be kind of tucking it out of sight.
Sort of,
so, I mean, to try and describe this, obviously, people can't see the image that we're looking at, but I mean, it would somewhat diagonally position the two subwoofers across from each other, but definitely not diagonally across the entire space.
Yeah, so
almost as if you cut off the entire front of his room.
What, about 4 feet into the room from the back right corner, and the left sub would be middle of the room, mid wall, left wall. So they are diagonal across from each other, across the room, but they're not really. If you want to put that sub there, then he should put the second sub in front of the recliner, about the same distance into the room as the right rear one, which would put it in front of the front left speaker, probably with enough clearance and everything else. But it's sort of it would be right against that wall, so it might not be too bad. I don't know if he considers that to be enough out of sight. But that's
I mean,
if he wants to put that back right sub there, that's what I would do.
Yeah, again, if what he's going for is as unobtrusive as possible, then diagonally opposite corners or as close to it is probably going to be the way to go. If there's some way to have a sub close to his television, either behind his front left or his front right speaker, or somewhere along one of those side walls in front of the front left speaker or in front of the front right speaker, and then have the second sub at the back of the room diagonally opposite to that. I mean, as far as the acoustics goes, that's about as good as it's going to get. Now, can you make that so that you can't see it at all?
No,
No. You're going to be able to see it, but
it's just gonna
if
be
you
all cute. Don't worry about it.
yeah, I mean the thing is his room is not gigantic. I mean 26 feet long is fairly long, but it's only at a maximum 13 feet
Yeah,
wide.
the front wall is 11 feet, so it's
Yeah, so
even
this is
more
not a
than that.
huge space. So, for example, a pair of say SB 2000s, which are
Ooh.
not enormous subwoofers, they're like a 14 and a third inch cube, basically, a little bit over a 14-inch cube. Not huge, and should be able to handle this size of room. So,
Yeah,
if you went with that type of solution, I mean, obviously we can't promise they'll be invisible, but they certainly won't be objectionable, I would say, as
yeah,
far
they won't
as
be one of those squared
visually.
boxes where they'd be massive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really unclear about that back right corner.
Yeah.
That back right corner might be, and frankly, he's got his couch right in the middle of his room. I would like him to scoot that back some.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. I think maybe he's got like the perfect viewing distance from a 70-inch
Right.
screen is what he's got going on there, which is fine. But we've already talked about the guy last week who's sitting in the middle of his room
Yeah,
with
that
his
was Lior.
50 hertz. Yeah, Lior, with his 50 hertz null. You may be positioning yourself to have another question in about 3 months where you go, sounds weird. Not really sure
Play
why.
a scoop, and there's a big scoop out in the middle of
Yeah,
it. A
yeah,
sweep, and there's a big
sweep.
scoop
Yeah.
somewhere in the middle of
So
that.
if you can almost line up that couch at least with like where the desk ends when that wall kind of kicks in, if you line up the back of the couch right there, that would give you a little bit more. Now it makes the walkway a little bit tight, but your walkway is already ridiculously tight anyways because of where you've got that chair position close. It's a chair and the couch. Really, according to this picture, looks like you've got to maybe turn sideways to get past one to the other, and
Mhm.
they're both along the side wall. So, if you move the left sub, if you keep the right sub where it is, you move the left sub in front of that chair and maybe forward a couple of feet, and then move everything back a couple of feet. I think sonically you're going to be better off, but
Yeah. Once
that's
again,
just from this picture.
our goal is always to get the two subwoofers across the room from one another, because the whole way that the two subwoofer system is working is that they're basically working as active bass traps for each other. So that instead of the sound wave coming out of one sub, going across the room, bouncing off of that opposite wall, and coming back and doubling up or canceling out itself, when it reaches that opposite wall, there's another subwoofer over there. And because they're both working in mono, that subwoofer is moving in just as that sound wave is reaching that wall, and therefore it's actively canceling it out so you don't get the standing wave in the first place. That's why it works, sort of on a fluid dynamics or on a physics level of why it's an effective way to set up your subs. So that's always the goal, getting your subs across the room from one another. And yeah, I think that's about the best suggestions we can give. And if you go for smaller, sealed, but still powerful subwoofers, then you should be able to do it without harming the visuals of your room too much.
Yeah, and plus the light's gonna be off, dude. Who cares?
Yeah.
Caesar and over on Facebook and Eliezer both have some comments. Caesar first strongly disagree with our assertion that Martin Logan electrostatic speakers are only good for one listening position and that they aren't well suited for home theater. Caesar has a pair of Martin Logan electro motion speakers, and he says that music sounds awesome in all of the seats in this room, and he can even stand up and walk around and the sound still engulfs him. So he urges us to take another lesson. Perhaps improvements have been made in Martin Logan's. Why do I keep saying that? Logan's electrostatic designs. Funnily is not a word, I don't think. Funny
Funnily
enough,
so word.
Eliezer wrote in to say that he got to directly compare the Martin Logan Montes speakers, which were the ones in question,
Mhm.
against the B&W 802D Diamond series. He says the B&Ws were more forgiving in terms of seated position, but when he was locked in the sweet spot, the Martin Logan Montes blew him away and are the best sound he's ever heard. Now, there should be some sort of, if you were listening, you probably know what we're going to say. And it's very clear here that Caesar is listening to one set of Martin Logan speakers, which are not the ones that we were talking about. And Eliezer is listening to the ones we were talking about. Now,
Mhm.
we did probably use Martin Logan as sort of a general and say, in general, they are not good.
We certainly used electrostatic in a
Yes.
large general term. We
Yeah.
definitely did that.
So, but there's no denying that there can be electrostatic speakers, but the electromotion ones are quite a bit bigger, aren't they? Aren't they like
No,
just
actually, they're quite a bit smaller. They're actually the least expensive of the electrostatic panel type speakers. If he's talking about the towers, which I believe Cesar is, because the Electromotion series of speakers does have a center speaker and surrounds, those ones don't use electrostatic panels at all. They use folded ribbon tweeters and standard dynamic cone drivers.
well, there you go.
So it's only the towers, and those towers are quite a bit smaller. Importantly, they're quite a bit narrower than the larger electrostatic speakers in Martin Logan's lineup. You know, from left to right, they're narrower in terms of a panel, and that panel is only handling a higher set of frequencies. It isn't playing as low as the much larger electrostatic panels in Martin Logan's lineup. So,
Well, the Electromotion ESLs have got the electrostatic,
yeah,
whatever they call that.
but it's
They
a
have
it's a substantially smaller panel. That is their
yeah.
least expensive and smallest electrostatic panel.
And we
that they
talked.
have.
If you go back and listen to the interview we did with David Jansen, he talked a little bit about bending these things and how they bent them in order to try to get that wider dispersion. He said it didn't work that well, but
Yeah, it was more to do with the manufacturing process and it being a lot easier to get a uniform curved surface than a truly uniform, completely flat surface out of basically stamped steel, which is the what material they're using for their stators. Yeah, so it had more to do with that.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so the Montes, on the other hand, are much more directional, and Eliezer found that as well. And that electrostatic speaker design, the really true flat panel, that's just a characteristic of them. It's there may be, like in the case of these particular ones that Cesar is talking about, maybe ones that that are a little bit better, or a little bit worse, or whatever. But these particular ones, the Montes, are the ones that are much more directional, and they tend to have that characteristic of in your head, completely crazy imaging like you cannot believe. Certainly do not need any speakers on your ceiling in order to make sounds go up and down. They can do it all by themselves. So yeah, apples to apples sort of thing.
Yeah, there's also a question here that I have for Cesar, which is that there's a difference between, first of all, just thinking something sounds good, and then there's a difference between an engulfing sound and a pinpoint imaging sound. Because even if you're using very wide dispersion traditional speakers that use a regular dome tweeter and a regular cone midwoofer or something like that, even there, if you're not inside the sweet spot, which might be a little bit wider than something like a Martin Logan Montes will produce, but there still is a sweet spot in which you get a rock solid phantom center image. And as you move outside of that sweet spot, even with really wide dispersion speakers, that effect starts to collapse. And that's just sort of unavoidable because of the precedence effect, where as soon as you get a large enough difference just in distance between the two speakers or in amplitude, because you've moved far enough away from one speaker that one speaker is louder than the other just because of distance, there's no way to avoid that. So I'm kind of wondering if what Cesar's describing, while he's finding it very pleasing, is actually a different thing than what we were talking about, which is that real pinpoint imaging and being able to sort of like take a pinpoint object and move it around virtually in space, even going through your head. Because I really doubt that he can stand up and walk around his room and maintain that kind of imaging, regardless of what speakers he has. I just think that's more or less impossible.
Yeah, it might be. I'm looking at their stuff right now because it's been a while since I've looked at stuff.
I mean, I did want to mention what you touched upon, which is that, we do have to be careful. This is a good reminder that it's very easy for people to equate a brand with a certain description rather than just one product within that brand's lineup. And that's an important distinction to make because, I mean, there are plenty of brands. I mean, a great example would be, say, like Behringer, where I've recommended quite a few of their products, but they also have products in their lineup that you'll never hear me mention because they're not very good. So it's not just that Behringer overall is recommended. It's a specific product from them. And in this case, that's applying to a lesser extent, but it's like the Martin Logan Electromotion speakers have some different characteristics than their much larger electrostatic panels like the Montes. So it isn't just Martin Logan overall. It is model specific, some of the things we're saying.
I mean, you can even look at some of my favorite brands like RBH and stuff like that, and I'll constantly say, "Hey, man, you can buy any one of their speakers you want." I don't the subwoofers. If you really want it to match, I suppose. If you like all the colors to be the same, So, anyways, yeah. Now on to John. Found the subwoofer cable at a yard sale for $1. It has a grounding cable, which he's never seen before. Where would this grounding cable be connected? And it looks exactly the way you expect it to. It has like a little wire off the main cable, and it has that little C-shaped thing where you put it underneath the screw and you lock the screw down. Some subs have grounding screws,
like the ones from REL.
Yep.
They very commonly have grounding screws.
So you can attach it right there. That's what you would do it for. And for $1, it's a pretty good deal for a subwoofer cable. No
any AV receiver that has a dedicated phono input will most likely have a grounding screw on it. So the whole idea here is to avoid a ground loop by having your subwoofer and your AV receiver share ground. Hopefully one of those will have only a 2-pronged AC power cord. If they both have 3-pronged AC power cords and you connect them together ground chassis to ground chassis, I'm not exactly sure what that would do, to be honest.
I'm not an electrician, so I have no idea.
Setting up any sort of ground loop. But the whole idea here is they'll both be grounded to the same, one of them having a 3-prong, and that should avoid any ground loop issues. I was surprised when I saw this cable, simply because it was in a package labeled subwoofer cable. I was really expecting this to be an old mono phono cable because those existed. Right? You had old mono phono cables, and all of those had grounding wires. And at first, when I just read what John had written, I thought that's what this was going to be. But nope, this is a new cable. It's labeled subwoofer cable right on the blister packaging. So I went, oh, okay, kind of surprised at that. I wonder if it was like some warehouse somewhere that had a bunch of mono grounded phono cables from years ago. And
it's really bizarre. If you really look at it, it doesn't exactly look like an RCA cable either. I mean, it looks like it, but almost at the end, the tip, it almost looks like a 3.5. It probably isn't. It probably is an RCA cable. But
I think that's just a reflection of light off the blister packaging.
Very well could be.
I think that's what that is.
It's just kind of a bizarre looking cable, but it was probably made either there's an older cable that he found, or it was just this company came out with a bunch of them. I didn't do any research on it because I just looked at it and went, oh yeah, it's a grounding cable. Weird. But
maybe they worked hand in hand with REL.
Who knows?
Yeah. In any case, no reason to worry about it. It's not going to do any harm by not connecting it to anything.
That's right.
So.
Don't let it touch anything else.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Just in case.
Maybe, just sort of electrical tape it to the side of itself.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways. That was all the questions left over from last week. We got pretty close last week because apparently, whatever. I'm going to keep close watch of the time because seriously, no more 2-hour podcasts.
It's become our norm.
So now for this week, we get an update from Thomas. His request for Thomas. For Thomas.
Yeah.
His request last week was for a $200 to $300 portable headphone amp / stack. Sent Rob down the rabbit hole this past week. Last week, Rob suggested the Oppo $300 HA2 for its slim form factor and ability to handle pretty much any sampling rate and being covered with leather because stupid. But Rob found a couple of professional reviews that mentioned Rob's most hated trait of any headphone amplifier, an audible noise floor.
Which I was rather surprised at because Oppo has had such a good track record up until now. I mean, they've specifically focused on analog audio and quiet headphone amplifier in their HA1, their gigantic $1,200 desktop unit. So I was surprised at this. I really thought this was something Oppo would nail down, but I believe these reviews. There was one place I was reading quite a few reviews. Headphonia.com or headphonia.org or something like that. Anyway, I found the review reviews interesting because every single product produced a wider, cleaner soundstage than the last. So by this point, it must sound as though they have virtual speakers that are 80 feet apart because every product ever reviewed has made the soundstage wider and cleaner. So I don't exactly buy into a lot of that. However, they're one of the few places that always remarks on the noise floor and whether there's any idle hiss, and they use in-ear monitors, sensitive ones, that if anything's going to reveal a noise floor in a headphone amplifier to you, it will be that. So I liked their reviews simply for that fact. The rest of it I kind of ignored.
All right. I don't know what the return policy is, but I would. I would.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would still test it out. I mean, I know Oppo does take returns. I don't know if they. I don't think they pay for shipping both ways though.
Either. But how much can
But
it
this is a
cost you? It's got to weigh like 3 ounces.
I know
All
it's
right.
a small, light thing.
So
this
Rob,
one,
are you going to change your recommendation now?
I am, yeah, because I was reading around and I'm like, the one thing I care about with any headphone amplifier is that it has to have a silent noise floor. That bugs me to no end when I can plug my headphones in, listen to it idle where there's nothing actually playing, and hear a soft hiss in the background. It's like, why must that be the case? It doesn't have to be the case. There are products that don't do it. So I really searched around, and I was still trying to find one that fit this $200 to $300 price range because that was the request. And I came upon one which I had never looked at before, but it's from a company called TIAC. They are a Japanese company, and they have a product called the HAP50. It's available at Amazon. It's going for about $200. Regular MSRP is $300. So even if you're paying full price, it's still within the price range requested. And quite a few professional reviews out there. Almost all of them actually remarked on how silent it was and how there was no hiss. Now, the one knock, if you want to call it that, against these this particular portable headphone slash headphone amp slash DAC is that it only handles up to 24-bit 96 kilohertz. That's where its DAC maxes out. So if you really care about 192 or 384, then this won't do it. Only goes up to 2496, but by golly, is that already more than you need? 2448 would be just fine. It also does not itself support DSD. It only supports PCM. So if you want to call those knocks against it, those are the knocks against it. The other slight knock is that it is not a tremendously slim and sleek unit. It has some thickness to it, certainly thicker than the Oppo and certainly thicker than almost all smartphones now. So as far as pocketability goes, maybe having it strapped to your phone would make quite a bulky unit. But it does have its own rechargeable battery built in. And one nice feature of this particular one is that a lot of headphone amps, you need an adapter if you're using an iOS device. They call it their camera connection kit. If you have one of the lightning jacks, which normally won't output audio to a lot of these separate devices. This one doesn't need that. You can use the standard Lightning to USB cable, and it will work right away. TIAC also supports a free app that you can download on iOS or Android that will let it play 9624, even if your device doesn't natively support it, which iOS devices don't. So, all in all, it hits the price. It has the thing I'm looking for, which is a silent noise floor, at least according to all the reviews. I don't have personal experience with it. And yeah, I'm changing my recommendation. I hope Thomas didn't waste his money.
I don't know they would have wasted it anyways. We're gonna see. I'm trying to figure out what because I said the DAC Magic, right?
You did, yeah. Which I don't believe has a battery built into it, though.
It does not.
Yeah.
No, it's 24-bit DAC. USB class 2. It only says 24.
Seeing if it goes up to 192.
I am seeing that. That's what I'm looking for right now. Features. There we go. 96. No, 192.
192. I see.
Over USB 2.0. 192 24-bit. That's
which
the
we
max.
really shouldn't care about. It's just a numbers game.
Who cares?
So meaningless.
Mine wins. Yours sucks.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, it doesn't have a battery. You have to use a USB input. So, you connect it to a computer or something like that. What was he trying to connect it to? I don't remember. His phone? Is that
he wanted one that was portable and that he could use on his desktop connected to his computer if he wanted to.
Well, that one works. Mine works for that. I don't remember what the noise floor is, though. I mean, I've never noticed one. So,
In any case, yeah, I read reviews of several of the FiO units because he was saying he had the FiO 18 and he's like, I'm not really sure this was worth the money. And again, going through the reviews there, a lot of them did mention, no, it has a bit of a noise floor and not a tremendous amount of power if you're trying to drive really inefficient headphones. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking I'm not a huge fan. A lot of them said that the older FiO E17 was cleaner but had even less power. So that was the trade-off there. So yeah, it's kind of hard to really stand up and cheer for the FiO units at this point. This TIAC, I'm hoping someone out there gets one and tries it because I'm eager to hear back firsthand experience.
All right, let's go on. Jonathan sent us a link to a long blog post written by a former administrator of the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, Cass
Sunstein.
Sunstein.
That's the way they said it when he was on the Daily Show. I thought it was Sunstein because usually it's EI is Stein, but they said Sunstein when he was introduced on the Daily Show, so I'm going with that.
All right. Mr. Sunstein is rather famous for his nudge and groupthink theories, as well as being a professor of law at Harvard Law School. The post is supposed to be a review of a book titled How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, the Past, Present, and Future of a Multi-Billion-Dollar Franchise by Chris Taylor, but it really kind of does not mention the book that much. Instead, the blog post is really entitled How Star Wars Illuminates Constitutional Law and Authorship. And Mr. Sunstein seems to use the content of the book under quote-unquote review as a platform upon which to draw parallels between the revisionist history often told about how Star Wars was written and constitutional U.S. law, which means it's a terrible book review. Because you don't know, yeah. You come out of this thing, you have no idea what that book's about.
If you're looking to this review to figure out whether or not you should purchase How Star Wars Conquered the Universe, written by Chris Taylor, I have no idea whether that book is worth reading, although it seemed to spark some ideas in Mr. Sunstein. So, if nothing else, it clearly did that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we will link that up. Jonathan's, I think, takeaway from it was like, hey, that guy's pretty famous and he is really into Star Wars.
Yeah, because the level of geek knowledge of Star Wars in general was on display.
Yes.
So it is clear that someone who is not a fan of Star Wars and we're simply trying to equate two seemingly unrelated things, which I still stand by my opinion that he was really basically holding a hammer and everything looked like a nail to him because he is an expert in constitutional law. And I have a feeling that many things remind him of some part of constitutional law in his day-to-day life, given what was written in this rather long quote-unquote review. But yeah, he is clearly a fan of Star Wars.
Yes.
That goes uncontested.
Clearly. He also, Jonathan, Jonathan also thinks we need to change our tagline. He suggested the car talk of AV, which I'm not against that. I think we can change the tagline.
I mean, I like emphasizing that what the show has evolved into, at least in its current form, is question and answer. So if we have a tagline, I want to somehow keep that very clear. It's just saying car talk of AV. It's like if you are familiar with car talk as a show, then that will make sense. But what if you're not?
Well, you would still expect call-ins too, and we don't get call-ins. Mostly because I'll be honest with you, the people that call into Car Talk, I don't know, they must screen those people and like coach.
I would hope so.
on most radio shows where they let people call in, the fastest way to get me to turn off that station is to have some random person go, I just wanted to say that I'm gone. Yep. I have turned that show off. And that's why I'm sort of against having call-ins, that and the whole technological hurdle that we'd have to overcome. But
and not having a producer.
Yeah, we need a producer.
Is kind of a large hurdle to that thing.
Because we certainly can't. I don't know what a producer, how much they cost. They probably cost money. Can they be earned? Can interns be producers? Probably. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So we can. Hey, if you guys got a good tagline for us, that you think works, let us know. You could be listener of the week.
And I had sort of a request for our listeners because certainly I think we've cultivated what I think is a fantastic community around this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
I am so happy with the people we've met because to a person, I haven't come across anybody who's contacted us, gotten in touch with us, joined one of our hang up parties after the show, who's been like a person I don't ever want to talk to again. Like that just hasn't happened. Everybody has been really cool.
Yeah.
So I've been so happy about that. But one thing I was hoping everybody who is listening to this podcast might think of doing is get more people involved who have an interest. I mean, most people enjoy watching TV and movies. That is a large, huge group of people, but so many people either feel intimidated by this subject or they have some kind of interest in it, but not enough to like really delve into it themselves. And so they wouldn't be looking for this podcast necessarily, but we would love to be able to answer questions in a way for people who think, oh, this is too geeky for me. Because I mean, we've certainly gone geekier and geekier because that's the sort of questions that keep coming in. And we're happy to do that because we love talking about this stuff. But one of the things that I really miss about having Liz around is that keeping that geek level back down to a point where someone who's maybe just getting into this hobby would say, oh, this is the podcast for me, where I can get my questions answered by people who know what they're talking about, but can make it understandable instead of impenetrable like so many of the forums become. So, if
search the forum, like,
yeah,
that is not a valid response.
no kidding.
So what are you asking for? You're asking for...
I'm saying if you've got parents, if you've got grandparents, if you've got relatives, friends, whomever, who's like, oh, I would like something that sounds better than my TV's built-in speakers, but I don't even know where to start. Turn them onto this podcast. Let them know that whatever level of question they have, we will answer it, and we'll try to make it as understandable and as comprehensible as we possibly can.
You have to wait through 2 hours worth of podcast to get to your answer.
I think if anybody lets us know that that's what's going on, like you might ask the question on their behalf and then just say, hey, tune in. If you let us know, I promise I will put that at the top of the show so they don't have to wait for 2 hours if it's a easier, simpler, I want this in plain language type of question.
That's fine. We can do that.
That's my pledge. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love people to ask me more questions that are like about, other geeky stuff, movies, TV shows, that sort of stuff, music, not so much music. We did get a music question. I don't know if it was today or yesterday. Or today, or I don't know if it was one that's going to show up in this podcast or not. We did get one about music, and I don't think the answer is going to be one they like, but I do like answering stuff like that. I don't generally answer very many questions about music, but I love talking about movies, TV shows, comic books.
Yeah,
heck,
I mean,
we got on. Hey, somebody mentioned MotoGP in the last hangout, and for 15 minutes. 2 people talked, and I was one of them, and we were debating who was the best motorcycle rider in MotoGP. So I can geek out on all sorts of stuff. So yes,
no, I can relate this to Cass Sunstein because part of his groupthink theory is that when you get a group of somewhat like-minded people who are generally on the same side of a topic, as they continue discussing it, it goes further and further and further down that topic and gets farther and farther away from the other side of that topic. So I would like to avoid that. I don't want us to become such a niche podcast that people feel we're impenetrable. It's like, nope, we need fresh ideas, fresh questions from people who think, oh, this is going to be the podcast.
I just found this record player. What do I do with it?
Yeah.
I'm so mad at my wife. I did not get that record player.
Aww.
She was like, oh no, we gave that away. I'm like, what? I'm like, listen, before you give anything else away, if it plugs into a damn wall, you ask me. If it's something that goes along with something that plugs into a wall, ask me. I mean, at the very least, bring it to my house and let me throw it away, okay? Because I would like the right of first refusal. Anyways, I'm kind of bitter about that. At the very least, I was thinking of making a Office Space-esque video of me destroying it. I thought that would be funny. Podcast. I have got issues. All right, Nikhil. I'm going with Nikhil. Nikhil. I don't know. There's a lot.
I'm sure he's figured out it's him by now.
Yes. Rose a while back seeking advice on how to handle his media room in his new house, which was pre-wired for speakers with all the speakers up high, and he had $5,000 budget to buy all of his home theater equipment and have it installed by a contractor. I think that was at the point we started giggling.
Aww.
Come on, $5,000. That's those guys sneeze and you've spent $5,000. Nikhil has now had his projector installed, yay, and all of his various wires run inside walls, yay, and as predicted, has exceeded his original goal of $5,000.
Yeah.
So now he's got a new problem. He says that his new projection setup is bright enough that it's illuminating the whole room, which is a light tan color. This is a media room, so he's got some options here. It's just not like it's in this great room, so
right.
He can make some changes. So he would like us to tell him what color to paint his room, or to let him know if there's a different, better solution for reducing all of this light bouncing around his room. When I was in Jacksonville, I just went down to the Lowe's and picked out a gray that I liked and said, give me that gray. And that's what I did. And this home theater, you guys can see if you're watching the video, it's orange. I walked into this room, it's orange. The roof, the ceiling is white. I've never really, I turn the lights off in here, I'm not noticing any light bouncing off of anything. Maybe because I don't have my projector. I mean, if he had his installed, I'm sure it was calibrated. I hope it was calibrated.
Yeah, that's
a good question to ask. It wasn't calibrated. Because if it wasn't calibrated, dude, maybe your problem is not your walls. It's that you've got that thing on torch mode and you need to dial it back.
Almost all front projectors come with both a high power lamp and a low power lamp. It's often called an eco mode. Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I know his room is not huge. So his seating distance is not going to be tremendous and his screen size is not going to be enormous. So he should be able to use the low power or eco mode in pretty much any home theater projector. I know he was aiming at the Sony HW40 originally. I don't know if that is what he ended up buying, but that is certainly a very high brightness projector. It's capable of throwing out a lot of light. So yeah, I'm not sure if it was all actually calibrated for him or just physically installed, which is possible. Right. So there might be settings you could adjust in the projector itself to bring the brightness down. Now, he may like the brightness because it looks like a gigantic plasma at the moment, but it's probably not supposed to be that bright. If it's illuminating your whole room, that's probably on the bright side.
I would do a little research here, Nikhil, and find out. Well, first of all, you know whether or not it was calibrated. If it was calibrated, well, then move on to changing the color of the room. If it wasn't calibrated, then either consider getting it calibrated or do some research about how to calibrate it yourself.
Yeah, a great resource would be to go to projectorcentral.com and go to specifically your projector. If you just type in your projector model number, go to their projection throw calculator, and they will actually have a graph there where, based on the distance from that projector to your screen and your screen size, it will actually show you whether it's too bright, just right, or too dim. So you should be able to see that pretty easily as long as you know your projector model, your screen size, and your distance from screen to projector.
Yeah. And then you can go in there and you want to make sure it's on movie mode. You want to put to some sort of warm setting, and you can use the THX discs, like your Blu-ray discs, to do some calibration, some simple calibration that way. If you want to get more advanced, calibration is frankly something that if you've got a projector, I would consider having it done at least once a year. Not once at least, but have it done once a year, once every other year, maybe at the outside. It's a couple $100, and your bulb changes over time. So it's something to consider. And then, yeah, it's a maintenance expense, and yeah, you don't want to do it, but at least do it once. That first
if nothing else, just to see an accurate image, perhaps for the first time.
Yeah.
Because that is something that is well worth getting used to. Because once you get used to an actual accurate calibrated image, almost every other display you will see in the rest of the world, you're like, ugh, so inaccurate.
So what the other option is to make a friend who can do it for you, which, believe it or not, if you spend some time on the forums, there's a decent possibility you're going to run into somebody who's
true,
who might have some of the gear, or you might say, go to a forum and say, listen, I live in the greater whatever metropolitan area. I'd love to get my stuff calibrated, but I don't want to spend the money for the $200 or whatever it's going to be for this calibration kit. Anybody want to go in with me? And you get 2 or 3 or 4 people to go in. Pretty soon, instead of spending $200, spend 50 or 25 or something like that. So something to consider. But provided that all that has been done, and you're still thinking there's too much light bouncing off your walls, all I did when I was in Jacksonville is I went down to Lowe's and said, give me that gray. I like that one. That one's pretty. In fact, I don't even think I did that. I think my wife did that. She came back and said, gray, this is the one we're going with. I was like, cool. That's going to be the home theater. She's like, that's cool. And that's what we did.
Yep. Gray is what you want. Obviously, the darker and closer towards black you go, then the darker the walls will be and the less reflective you get. I mean, a lot of people don't like a true matte paint on the walls. It does look a little bit weird, but you don't want like high gloss, because then even if it's gray, if it's high gloss paint, that will be reflecting a lot of light. So try to go closer to matte. Maybe like an eggshell or something like that would be fine. But yeah, basically gray. I mean, if you really want to get into it, you can look for a Munsell gray, which there is one company called GTI that sells like $80 a gallon perfectly Munsell gray paint, which is like for a color correction room. Someone is setting up a professional room where they're going to be making movies and they want that exact paint. Obviously, you don't need anything like that. If you actually just went to any store and you got their basic white and told them, hey, add some basic black into this until it's as dark as I want it to be, that will be neutral enough as far as gray
just remember
goes.
that however dark it looks, it's going to dry a little bit darker.
Yeah.
So.
But in your case, that would be all right if it was a touch darker than you even thought.
That way you get your wife to say, that's as dark as I can handle. You're like,
Yep.
you sure?
Yep.
You sure? Make sure she does that when it's wet. You sure? When the guy tries to put one on the little paint stick to let it dry, you tell him to step off. She's looking at it in the thing. It's just fine. That's right. Yep. Forgiveness.
Some people do put fabric up on their theaters, but paint is cheaper and easier, and it will do the job just fine. So
I agree. Like I said, my theater in here is orange, and it's just fine. It's a gloss too. I think. I think it's a gloss. I don't know.
It might be satin finish.
It might be a satin. It's not matte. Which my last theater was matte, and I liked it better. But this is fine. It doesn't really bother me. It gets dark in here when I turn the lights off. I don't really see any lights reflecting off anything. And I've never been one that's really worried about like light reflecting off the ceiling and bothering me, or off my gloss black speakers either. It's never something that really has been an issue for me. Now, Nikhil also wanted to better understand tweeters in general. He hears us saying things like ribbon tweeters, metal dome tweeters, soft dome tweeters. What does it all mean? Okay. In general, a tweeter is usually the smallest driver. It's the one that's going to be producing the highest frequencies. Okay, that means it's got to move really fast, and it's got to have generally it's got to be very light. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a super stiff. Sometimes it is. It doesn't have to be as super stiff because it's moving really super fast. It isn't moving a ton of air. It's just moving air over and over. The soft dome tweeters are exactly what they sound like. They're a dome and they're soft. And if you touch them, you can actually bend them with your little finger and they snap right back. Okay. Metal dome tweeters are metal. They're a dome. You can bend those. They don't bend back so easy. So don't do that.
Yeah. Not the best idea.
Let's see. There's other ones too. The ring radiators. They look like I don't know, like a pimple or something.
Like a concentric series of donuts.
That's sort of what they look there's usually like something sticking out of the middle, like a little spike in the middle, and there's like all these little donuts around the outside. That's a ring. You don't see a whole lot of those anymore. They do exist. I've seen them. I've tested a pair of speakers with them. I didn't hate them. I thought the ring raider was a pretty nice little tweeter. I think it has more issues than other tweeters do. That's why we don't see them as much. Metal dome and soft dome tweeters are the most popular because I think they're the cheapest to manufacture. And the material is commonly available. So usually metal dome is either titanium or aluminum, mostly aluminum. You see stuff like diamond tweeters. You got your ribbon tweeters, which Rob's talked about a lot. You got your electrostatic tweeters as well. Those tend to be quite a bit larger because of how little they move and how much they have to have surface areas that have to come out of you. The ribbon tweeters, there's the folded ribbon, which or like they act like accordions, right?
Yep.
So
They
that's how
squeeze
they
the air out from
squeeze the
between their
air
folds.
between the folds out at you. And the other ribbon tweeters, I don't know that I know necessarily how those work. They work like electrostatic ones, right? Just front and back, the regular ribbon tweeters.
Well, I mean, to take this back a little bit, all of these are just different methods of agitating the air and agitating the air at a high frequency. So the tweeter is generally going to be covering the frequencies at the very lowest, maybe down to 1 kilohertz, more commonly 2 kilohertz or higher.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think my tweeters are good down to 1 1.5
1.8 or
kilohertz.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they tend to go pretty low as tweeters go. So really,
Right.
2 kilohertz is they're dropping off pretty heavily at that point.
That's normal is 2.5, 2 kilohertz is sort of where the low end of what frequencies the tweeter is producing, and then all the way up as high as it can play. And the reason why you have a separate, smaller, physically smaller driver handling higher frequencies is a matter of physics, because the wavelength of a very high frequency gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And we were just talking about electrostatic speakers, and the reason why electrostatic speakers are more directional is because they're very wide. In general, they're quite wide. From left to right, they're a wide panel. And when you have a wide panel vibrating very quickly to, say, produce a 20 kilohertz signal, that 20 kilohertz signal is much, much smaller. The actual wavelength of that frequency is much, much smaller than the width of the panel itself, which means that from the left side of the panel to the right side of the panel, there's sound wave interaction. And we don't really want that happening within the material itself that's producing the frequency. Ideally, the thing that is making the frequency is narrower than the highest frequency that it's producing. So you don't get interaction across the surface of the thing itself. So that's why tweeters are generally like 1 inch in diameter, so that they're smaller than the wavelength of the sound that they're producing. So all of these things that we've mentioned, ribbon tweeters, dome tweeters, there's even like plasma tweeters, folded ribbon tweeters, quasi ribbon tweeters, all kinds of things. They're all just different ways of agitating the air. And so you can think of agitating the air in a couple of ways. You can either say, I have a really small surface area, so to agitate the air a lot and make it very loud, make it high in amplitude, I have to move that thing back and forth a pretty great distance. That's called the excursion, how far it's moving in and out. And that gives you high amplitude with a small surface area. The alternative is to have a larger surface area and then not move it as far back and forth. The air is being displaced. So large surface area and small movement can displace just as much air as small surface area and lots of movement. So it's different ways of doing the same thing. So a ribbon tweeter is a large surface area that moves very little, because the signal is actually being sent through a little ribbon, usually made out of aluminum, and it's being held between two magnets of opposite polarity. So as the signal goes through it, it acts off of those magnets. A quasi ribbon just takes that same idea and puts it on some kind of substrate so that it's stiffer and stronger, because ribbon tweeters are kind of fragile. So a quasi ribbon does the same thing, but then that makes it heavier. So heavier makes it harder to move. You need more power to move it. A planar magnetic takes a substrate and coils a wire across it, usually in sort of a zigzag pattern, and that's where the signal goes through it. So all just different ways of getting something to move and agitate the air at a high frequency.
So the real question here, Nikhil, I'll give up, is which one's the best, right? Isn't that the real question? Which one's the best? And the answer is all of them and none of them. Okay. Any tweeter, no matter how well designed, no matter how expensive it may be, can be both the best and the worst thing you've ever heard, depending on implementation within the actual speaker. If it's asked to play too low, it's going to distort and sound awful. Okay. If it's crossed over just perfectly with a great mid-range and in a well-designed box, it's going to sound fantastic, even if it's only, a $10 tweeter as opposed to a $100 tweeter. It's all about implementation. I take a very agnostic approach to these things. Yes, I think that the ribbon tweeters and these more expensive ones, they can sound a lot better, but you can still look at some of these top-notch $20,000, $50,000 speakers, and they've still got dome tweeters in them. They're using dome tweeters. Yes, they may be using magnesium dome tweeters, but they're using
beryllium.
beryllium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I hear beryllium, I cannot not think of The Shadow, that movie The Shadow, with the beryllium sphere. Every time anybody says the word beryllium, that's all I see is that guy saying
It's a
beryllium sphere and the thing rolling around and everything. And you're like,
it's a real metal. It's an element on the periodic table. Beryllium is a thing.
I know. I just, that movie, it just, that is where my mind goes every time I hear that. Anyways, so Nikhil, I'm very agnostic about these things. There's, a really well-designed speaker is going to sound fantastic. Can a tweeter sound bad? Can a more expensive tweeter sound better than a less expensive tweeter? Of course. Will it necessarily? Well, if you got a crappy speaker designer who did a terrible job with the crossover and designed the box, it's probably going to sound terrible no matter what you do with it. So
yeah, they all have pluses and minuses. So it's not as though soft dome is better than metal dome and ribbon is better than the like. It's not that simple. It is a matter of implementation. And when we talk about certain characteristic properties of, say, a ribbon tweeter, in general, a ribbon tweeter, because of the way it works, being one little ribbon of aluminum moving between two magnets and the signal going right through that aluminum to get it to work off the polarity of those magnets, by its nature, it can't move very far back and forth. So it has to have a larger surface area. And because it's not moving very far back and forth, that gives it better transient response than a tweeter that has to move very far back and forth because it has a smaller surface area. But then that one that has a smaller surface area and can move farther back and forth perhaps could play louder or has wider dispersion or any number of other characteristics. So it's all a trade-off. And that's sort of where we're coming
it's
from
also how
with
low
those
it
things.
plays, how well it will cross over into the mid-range. There's a tons of variables that are here.
Yeah.
So when the speaker designer is designing a speaker, there's a couple of things that come into play. I think the biggest one is familiarity. They will go with what they know. They're not going to, they will experiment with other stuff, but when it comes right down to making the speaker that they know is going to sound good, they're going to go with what they know. And they will, that's going to be the number one thing. After that, it's all about, them choosing what the best materials, the best drivers, the best, the best design box, the best everything they can do within the confines of the price point. They have to be able to hit their price point. So it's not like they can, if you think of it like, I think some speaker designers, what they'll do is they'll do something like the Blade concept speaker that Kathy did. They do this Blade speaker and say, let's just go crazy and just kind of come up with everything and see what happens. And then they take that technology. They're like, okay, how can we make this affordable? What can we do? And they build from that. But a lot of them don't do that. They're just like, I've got to hit $100 price point. How how much can I get for $100? And if you've ever played any role-playing game where you've got a limited number of points to build your character, know the trade-offs that you have to come up with. It's the same thing. They're like, okay, we're not going to be able to hit a 40 hertz tone. It's a bookshelf speaker. It's technically we could do it, but we can't afford the MDF. We can't afford the bracing, the driver. There's no way we can afford that. So what about 60? No, I don't think that's going to happen either. What about 80 with like a little bit of a roll off? Yeah, we could probably do 80. Okay. Well, I'd really love to use this tweeter, but that's going to be, what I mean? It's this whole trade-off thing. So, yeah. That's why a lot of times when you hear these, you hear a speaker reviewers talking about like the $2,000 price point, the $1,000 price point. These guys are all working within these same confines and they're trading off. So you're like, hey, I built a speaker that's got a lot of bass. For $1,000, you can get a speaker with a lot of bass, but you're definitely going to trade off on the high end or in the mid range or someplace else or in linearity overall. Once you get up past that into the 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, then you start seeing everybody going, well, they all kind of sound pretty good. They sound a little bit different, but they all sound pretty good. That's because there's way fewer trade-offs. And it comes down more so to your preference and how you like speakers to sound. And therefore you prefer certain designers. And, there may be tweaks that they do specifically to give themselves a signature sound.
Yep, because at the end of it all we're trying to do is agitate the air. We're trying to vibrate the air at a given frequency, but a large part of that is getting it to vibrate uniformly and getting it to stop when we want it to stop vibrating, which is not the easiest thing in the world because of inertia. So all of those factors just play into what do we have to do, how large can it be, and what material can it be made out of, and all of those things carry with them a cost. So
Newton's first law of motion, that whole inertia thing. Dang
Nope.
it. Dang it. All right. Jeff showed up last time at our hangout party, which after we record these on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m., I think we started a little bit earlier. We started at 8:40 something.
Like quarter two today. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we were both here, and why not? He shows up afterwards to our after party, because after this we'll start an after party. I don't know if I'm staying this week, but generally speaking, around 11 p.m. on a Tuesday nights Eastern time, there'll be a after party. So he showed up and we said hi. He was cool. Was he the one that didn't want to hear anything about Daredevil? Or no, it was The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, yeah. No spoilers.
And you kept talking. I kept telling you stop. You're a spoiler. You're like a walking spoiler.
I know. It's because I don't really care about spoilers.
Everybody else does.
I know.
A while back, Jeff was asking us if there's an easy, elegant way to use his Denon AVRX 4000 to play gapless multi-channel audio files over his network. We were unable to come up with any solution that wouldn't involve buying a new product. So Jeff ended up trying Kodi, K-O-D-I, which is formerly XBMC, on his Windows 7 PC. I guess HTPC, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, anything that's connected to your home theater
streams it from
becomes a home theater PC.
Anyways, he's loving it. It is cleaner and easier to install and use than he expected. And what he's doing most is the companion iOS app that lets him control his Kodi PC like a consumer electronics device with intuitive touchscreen controls. Kodi allows for direct. What is this? WAS API? WAS API? What is that?
That's the Windows Audio Session API. So it's basically what lets you bypass everything that Windows might do to the audio and just send the audio straight from the Kodi software itself to whatever output you're using, which could be your network card, or it could be your HDMI port, or it could be your sound card that's built into your PC. But it gets Windows out of the way, bypasses it.
There you go. So Jeff just wanted to share that update and encourage anybody who's on the fence to give Kodi a try. So glowing review from Jeff about Kodi. If he's only been doing it for a week or two, let's wait a month and see what terrible things might happen.
I mean, the main thing is he found a way to play multi-channel audio gaplessly. Without, I mean, this wasn't like a huge expenditure either, because Kodi you can get for free.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, he wasn't gung-ho on attaching a PC to his system at first, because he was, I mean, we've often talked about what a pain in the neck home theater PCs can be. It can be, but he's like, oh, after hearing all that, no, Kodi was a lot easier and cleaner and easier to use than he was expecting. So happy customer.
We're at an hour. Putting you on notice, boy. Jason on Facebook also wrote in with an update. Jason asked for wireless headphone recommendations, and he wound up buying 2 pairs of Sennheiser RS180 headphones with 1 transmitter to feed both pairs of headphones. Now, if I remember correctly, by this email, he asked his wife if she'd be interested, and she said no. So he bought them anyways. Okay. All right, Jason, let's see how this is going to work out. On the negative side, this is his review of the headphones. On the negative side, using a microwave oven does cause major interference. Ain't that the truth?
2.4 gigahertz signal, I'm assuming, is what's going on there.
Yeah. The range is just okay. That's you walk away more than one room and dropouts start to happen. Why are you walking away? I guess you're going to the bathroom.
Well, he has a child to look after, so
that's right.
Part of the reason they wanted the wireless headphones so they could watch TV at night, but still be able to go look in on the kid without having to deal with a tangle of wires and stuff.
All right, if one pair of headphones drops out, both pairs experiences the dropout, even when one pair remains in the same room as the transmitter the whole time. That's stupid. Anyways,
yeah, it's a little bit odd, but I mean, I'm assuming it's because there is a signal lock between the transmitter and any number of receiving devices. So once it loses that connection, the transmitter itself probably cycles and tries to reconnect.
Trying to get it back. Yeah. All right, on the plus side, the sound quality is better than expected with clear high and low frequencies. They are comfortable and lightweight. They're easy to connect to any sound system and easy to set up. The open back design allows them to still hear the outside world and each other. Overall, Jason is very happy with his purchase, but even more important, his wife is happy. He decided to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. He surprised his wife when he used them for the first time, but thanks to the excellent sound quality and comfort, it went over well. I think what he did, if I remember correctly from the email, was that he waited until he hit him.
Yep.
And he waited until she asked about
He set them up.
Yeah.
But then he hid them.
He hid them and waited until she said something. He says, well, why don't we try these? And put them on. And she loved them. And I was like, dude, that boy's got a pair. Jason, you've got a pair, sir. I respect you. I don't know that I would have tried that one. I don't know that I would have gone so far. But that is that's right. You're getting slow caught, boy. That was good. That was good.
Stand up if he could.
I would stand up.
His microphone.
It would be, I don't know. There's too much crap in the way. All right. In other news, Avengers Age of Ultron is already showing in theaters in Australia. I remember when that happened before, and I went running out to watch it before you guys could see it.
Yep.
But I didn't get to see the shawarma scene at the end of the first because that was
weird.
They added that afterwards. And he's excited for us to go see it. You know, I'm excited to go see it too. I have made no plans to do so though.
Paul and I were on the phone today. Paul is confirmed for our marathon beginning tomorrow.
Paul's going to have to be listener of the week pretty soon, too. I think he's got some more bumper stickers for us.
Yes, yeah. He mentioned I have to remind him that I will pick those up, the decals that we can stick on, I guess, our own cars if we're willing to.
Say decals?
Decals, yeah.
Decals.
Yeah, you can pronounce it either
way. Yeah, I could because that's the way it's pronounced. I've never ever heard anybody say decals. What the heck is a decal? It sounds like something you pry off the bottom of the ocean and open up and eat with some cocktail sauce. A decal.
All right.
Okay. Yep. It's going to be one of those days.
I'll say decal for you from now on.
Thank you.
I'm still never saying advertisement. That is not how that word is pronounced.
How do you say it? Advertisement?
Advertisement.
I'll take advertisement. Yeah. That's okay. I wouldn't correct you.
That is what the word is.
That and router. Those are the two things.
Router. Yeah. You take a route along a road somewhere. If something directs things down various pathways, it is a router.
It's a router.
I heard them on the AV Forums podcast where they're over in the UK and Scotland. They say router.
Well, those people know. All right. Jack J, which I now believe is Jack Johnson because why not? He's play some music. It makes me go to sleep. All right, Jack J only has a few DVD audio discs, mostly Porcupine Tree and Flaming Lips. And this is the question. Jack wonders why we mention Porcupine Tree often, but have never mentioned Flaming Lips. One very easy to understand reason. I don't have any Flaming Lips DVD audios. I don't have any of that. I got Porcupine Tree.
I don't either.
I've got Porcupine Tree, Blue Man Group, Diana Krall. I actually have a Tool DVD audio one that I've never listened to because I'm afraid it'll raise up demons or something. I don't know.
We should probably mention DVD audio itself because some people are going to be like, yeah, I have a DVD player too, and audio comes out of it. If you're not familiar with it, DVD audio is an actual all those words together, combined together with a little dash attaching them, DVD audio, was its own format, completely separate from everything else. It was a surround sound, music-only format that used DVD discs, but did not play in regular DVD players. You had to have a specific player that supported that specific format.
Everybody wonders why it failed. It was a competitor to the SACD.
That's right.
Super Audio CD. Now, Super Audio CD generally didn't have pictures. They may have had an image, but DVD audio tended to have more pictures associated with it.
But it was not like a movie format. It was meant for music specifically.
So I have a lot of DTS audio discs, which again are DTSs. They will play on normal DVD players.
Sure.
But the DTS discs were high quality audio discs that also had sometimes DVD audio tracks on them as well. So you could play one or the other, and that's a Blue Man Group. I have some like that. I have a couple other ones, but they're not springing to mind right now.
Yeah. Sort of the whole reason this came into being is because DVD as a format, when it was out, as far as the audio went, regular DVD supported regular Dolby Digital, which is loss E. What goes in is not the same as what comes out. Some information is lost. It supported regular DTS, which is loss E. It's good quality, but it's still loss E. And it supported 2 channels of lossless PCM audio. So when they wanted 5.1 channels of lossless audio, there had to be a new format, and that was DVD audio. It used a thing called Meridian lossless packaging, which eventually became Dolby True HD because they bought up the rights to use that technology. But at the time, it was its own completely separate thing.
Right. So, yeah, the problem is that you had to have a special player. Nobody has special players. Yeah. If you had a PlayStation 3, I think, do they play SACDs?
Nope. SACDs, not DVD audio.
But DVD audio was out in the cold, so you had to have a special player. There are some old Oppos that will, that were DVD
and the
players.
current Oppos still play DVD audio.
Well, I know. I'm saying that back in the day, you had to have like that. Oppo was the way to go to get something. I have like a 970 HD, which I think is the model, or 971, one of those, that I think just plays. I think it just plays SACD. It doesn't play DVD-A. And you often hear it referred to as DVD-A, or rather than DVD audio, because that just confuses people. Anyways, so the reason I don't talk about Flaming Lips is because I don't have any. So want to send me one, feel free. He was using a Pioneer DV610 AV player, but it died. He bought a Harman Kardon DVD-38 as a replacement. All he did was take the HDMI cable that used to plug into his Pioneer and plugged it into his new Harman Kardon. He continues to use his Zen AVR 1910 AV receiver and hasn't changed anything on that unit. But now he can only get lossy 5.1 audio when playing DVD-A discs, or else if he chooses PCM output, it sounds very strange, as though a bunch of speakers aren't playing. Is his HK DVD-38 a lemon? The real question here is, now that we just had that big discussion about the format, did you verify when you bought this Harman Kardon that it actually plays DVD-As and not just DVDs?
It absolutely does. I looked up the manual for this thing, and oh, what a lovely situation this thing is, because there were some HDMI connections sort of earlier on in the whole HDMI.
I don't think it was 1.2 before you could pass SACD.
That's right, yeah. But earlier on, there were a number of devices that had HDMI connections that would not pass 5.1 PCM. They were limited to the same audio formats as our optical and digital coax connections, which again is lossy Dolby Digital, lossy DTS, and 2 channels of PCM only. And guess what his Harman Kardon DVD-38 has? So the Harman Kardon DVD-38 is a DVD audio player, and it can play 5.1 lossless DVD audio, but you have to use its 5.1 analog output connections. That's the only way to get it in the full lossless and full surround sound. And that's in the manual. It is mentioned there because it says, as far as the HDMI connection goes, it tops out at 2 channels of PCM, not 5.1.
And if I read the manual correctly, the 1910 should have analog input. So
it does.
Should be just a matter of buying a bunch of RCA cables and making that connection.
If you get 6 RCA cables, you can listen to 5.1. It'll be analog, though, which means it's bypassing your bass management and bypassing any sort of room correction built into your 1910, which means you'll have to set up all those things in your Harman Kardon unit itself. So his Pioneer that he used to have, the DV610 AV, I read that manual too, and that one did pass 5.1 PCM. So that's why there's this difference happening. He used to have 5.1 lossless coming out of his Pioneer unit. The Harman Kardon can't do it.
So depending on your stance on this, either yes, it's a lemon because it doesn't do what you want it to do, or no, it's not a lemon. It does technically what you want it to do. It's just not in the way you want it to do it.
Yeah, and since you don't have a ton of DVD audio discs, and you're not getting more because it's a dead format.
That's right.
So I'm like, is this worth spending any amount of money on? Because he said he found this Harman Kardon unit at a pretty low price, so he snapped it up. He's like, great, I got a replacement for my Pioneer that died, and I just want to be able to play the discs I already own, which
Right.
makes total sense to me. I'd be awfully tempted to just go ahead and connect the analog connections and be like, there, it works. For these discs, I just won't have the same base management I have for all of my digital sources going into my Den in 1910. That would be my solution
Does that
here.
bypass Odyssey and all that other stuff too, though?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah.
Thanks.
That's a handful of discs. Like,
I
just,
know.
nah.
Anyways, Jack would like to have a Blu-ray player instead, but one that can play DVD audio discs. He knows the Oppo Blu-ray player will work. We'd like to keep the
Mhm.
price to under $150. Do we know of any options at that price?
No,
Nope.
not brand new.
Used,
Yep.
you could find maybe something. I don't know, an older Oppo.
Yeah, if you go looking for, I think what he wants is to have one disc player in his system,
Yeah, the
which is
universal disc
understandable.
player is a rare breed outside of Oppo. So, like, remember Lexicon was taking Oppos and dropping them into their own cases and
Mhm.
having their buttons press the Oppo's buttons.
That's right.
So, and then charging 10 times the price for it. It wasn't quite, it was 7 times, I think.
Yeah,
But
something like that.
yeah, no. You have to look for something used.
Yeah, there were really only a couple of Blu-ray options outside of Oppo anyway. Your biggest bet is going to be Denon. Denon had several Blu-ray player models, all of them at least $500 or more when they were new, but you might look for them used. The most popular one was called the DBP 1611. So you might search around eBay or Craigslist, see if someone's selling one. Yamaha also had a unit, the BDA 1000. That was a Blu-ray player that played DVD audio discs. So yeah, you're either looking at those or looking at an older Oppo that someone is maybe selling used, but can't point at anything brand new that's under 150.
Right. Lastly, Jack would like to know why the player must always handle all the decoding when it comes to DVD-A, as opposed to, say, Dolby True HD, where the player can send bitstream and the AV receiver can do the decoding.
Because it's Meridian lossless packaging, it is not True HD. At the point the DVD audio came out, Dolby hadn't secured all the rights to that yet and had not turned it into True HD yet. There was never a standard for passing the MLP, Meridian lossless packaging bitstream, out of any player. That was just not something that any DVD audio device ever did. So there was never a decoder built into any AV receiver to handle it. It was always meant to come out as either 5.1 PCM via HDMI or 5.1 analog. That's just
Because
the way
there's
it was.
literally like 20 people who care. That's why.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what it comes down to.
Super Audio CD was the same way until there was HDMI 1.2, and some AV receivers out there can decode DSD, that's direct stream digital. That's a completely different version of passing audio. So all of it is very silly, especially now that we have Blu-ray audio. I mean, there's actually a Blu-ray audio format, but it just uses DTS HD Master Audio or Dolby True HD because they do the same thing.
That's
They're
what I'd be
lossless.
buying, dude. To be honest with you, that's what to buy right now. Even to buy music CDs or music Blu-rays. There's not a lot of them out there, but they exist.
Yeah, there's
And
certainly that Super Audio CD community. I mean, they're hanging on to that thing. But I'm like, just move over to Blu-ray audio. Or just download FLAC off the internet now.
I
That's
think
what everyone's
Gene
doing.
had in one of his Acuras, he had a DVD-A player in there, so he could listen to DVD-A in the car. And I was like, what the biggest waste of high-end audio?
Well, I
It's the
can't cast
last
any
place.
aspersions because I still have my HD DVD movies, and I'm still holding
I
on
do
to
too.
those.
They're in a case over there next to the HD DVD player that I will gladly hand to
Right.
anybody who wants to come to my house and pick it up because I'm not shipping it.
Yeah.
But you can have the movies too. Look at that. All right, Infinite Gary heard Rob mention the idea of using 3 center channels speakers for left, right, and center last week. He says he tried doing that with 3 identical Revell C52 speakers in his bedroom setup. He says the sound field and timbre match was indeed seamless and smooth, but it just never sounded quite right for 2-channel. For 2-channel stereo, sorry. He wound up changing to a pair of M20 bookshelf speakers with a C52 in the center, but based on that experience, he doesn't think 3 center speakers across the front works as well as Rob said on the last week's podcast. That may be true, but his setup, those speakers were awfully close based on this
Yeah,
picture that you sent.
and up high.
Very high.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think either of us can generalize to the extent, right? I don't think there's any way that we can say 3 center speakers for left, center, and right will never work. And I can't say it will always work because it does depend on the design of the particular center speaker in question. And it depends on how it's positioned and placed and set up. So like any speaker, if it's suboptimally placed and positioned, it's not going to sound as great as a different design that might contend better with that particular placement. And I don't think Gary can say, "Oh, this just never works," because I've heard 3 identical speakers that are all horizontal or sort of square shaped, like the M and K speakers, where it does work fine, even for 2 channel stereo. So it is dependent on what you're using.
Anyways, Gary didn't find it work in his particular setup, so
Right.
you can take that end of one and do with it what you will. Jay wanted to weigh on the immersive audio and Ultra HD transition we're going through and get some thoughts from us. Now it says Jay, but then it says Jason after this.
Yeah,
So who is it?
His name is Jason, but he goes by Jay. I'm sorry.
All right. You don't confuse me.
Well, I was looking at the email name and
Jay basically sees the consumer market as a whole becoming split, with the 2 types of consumers further apart from one another. On one side, most people will just stream Ultra HD content, even though there will be some sacrifices to picture quality. They'll never care about immersive audio since they'll just be using the TV's built-in speakers. And on the other side, you'll have the niche collectors who want the very best sound quality possible. Do we agree, or do we think there'll be some sort of middle ground? I don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
To be honest with you, Jay, I don't. I see there being 2 camps. It's basically the 2 camps we have right now. We actually, I see there as being 3 camps, but I see there are 2 major camps: the people who don't give a crap, and the people who give just enough of a crap to get a surround sound and to get some decent speakers. That's most of us. That's me. That's Rob. Right now, Rob's on the high end of that, where he only puts speakers on the ceiling, and I'm at the low end, where I'm like, I need to recalibrate my system, but I have to fix the ceiling in here because of the leaks in my roof from before. So everything's on hold until I can get around to fixing this one thing, whereas Rob would have fixed it 3 weeks ago, right? So we're on the same spectrum, but we are not yet to this crazy that sort of esoteric niche market. Now, I'm putting immersive audio in my mind in that niche category.
Yeah.
Okay. Those people and the vinyl playing people and the people who get cable elevators and people who buy copper coated power strips. I swear I saw one of those. It was exactly that. They had taken a regular power strip. You could even see the plastic that was the plastic outlets are still the same. They took the case off and they put a copper case on it. It was like $2,000. I was like, you've lost your mind. It's a power strip. Clearly, it is still a power. Anyhow, those people and the immersive audio people, I think, are going to be part of the same group. They're going to be very, very rare. You're going to meet one every once in a while out in the wild and go, really? You have speakers on your ceiling? Huh? I think there'll be occasionally be a person who got like a theater, like some of our listeners who bought a house that had a theater installed where all the theater speakers were on the ceiling, like obviously put there by people who have never ever had a home theater in their lives, and they're going to use those as Dolby Atmos speakers or DTS-X speakers or whatever. That I think they still fall in my category, my people who care but aren't going to be crazy about it. I see there being like 2.5 camps. The most of the people are going to be people who don't care. The majority of the rest of them are going to be people who care but aren't going to be drilling holes in their ceilings or spending $3,000 on a tone arm, something like that. And then there's going to be the esoteric niche group out there that's always going to be calling the rest of us posers.
Yeah, I'm closer to agreeing with Jay just because I'm looking at it in the way of like physical media, which is when DVD was king of the hill. Everybody was buying DVD. If you wanted the best quality, if that's the type of person you were getting DVDs because they were clearly better than VHS and they were far more convenient and still better than Laserdisc. So what was your alternative? You wanted the best, you got it, but the whole mass market was getting DVD, even if you didn't really care, because it was still cheaper and easier to rent a DVD. And we didn't have streaming yet. And Netflix, everybody thinks of Netflix as just a streaming company now, but no, they built their entire company on sending DVDs to people in the mail. We went from that where everybody, regardless of how much you cared about movies and TV or not, was unified on this one hugely successful format. Blu-ray, obviously not nearly the same size of success as DVD, but it was still closer to being mass market. Now getting into Ultra HD Blu-ray, I have to agree, that is going to be a niche. Like, the mass market is not going to buy Ultra HD Blu-rays. I just don't see them doing it because streaming is the obvious alternative, or downloads. So I see
Well,
that
I still
very
see
much.
that as part of that niche, though. The Ultra
Mhm.
HD people. I mean, first of all, I think there's going to be a lot of people with Ultra HD screens
Oh
because
yeah,
that's going to
yeah,
happen.
that's gonna
But
happen.
then again, we have a lot of people that have HD screens that are still buying DVDs.
Sure.
The problem is that DVDs aren't going away.
Right.
So you're going to have DVDs, Blu-rays, and Ultra HD Blu-rays, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm buying Blu-rays because I want the best possible audio, right?
Yep.
I am in no way thinking that I need to have Ultra HD video, and I am going to be hard pressed to think. So I'm not probably going to upgrade that part of mine. Now, will I upgrade it to an Ultra HD player so that I can have Ultra HD sound? Uh,
Yeah.
if I'm already getting lossless, how much better lossless can it be if it's not?
Well, it'll be immersive with things overhead instead.
I'm not going to have those speakers.
That's the new thing. Yeah. Well, but I mean, that's what Jay's getting at, is that really when it comes to the highest quality possible Ultra HD image quality and the all out everything we can do with audio, it might be a very small group that is actually willing to go to the expense of putting in the playback system that can do it, and then also purchasing or renting the content that can deliver it that way. You yourself, I mean, you're huge into home theater, you're a total home theater geek, but even you're saying, I don't know that you're going to go that far. So I
This
can't
is
say
a
Jay's totally
fad. This is
wrong
going away. We all know this,
there.
right? We all know that immersive
Really?
audio is not going to stick. It's not going to stick. Are you
Hmm.
kidding me? It is not going to stick.
Hmm.
There is no way. That's why I don't really consider it as part of home theater yet. They have not done anything to convince me that they're going to be able to make this be a thing that people, real people, are going to adopt. Like DVD was adopted. Like when I got my
Yeah. Oh
DVD
yeah.
player, that my first one, I remember bringing it home and just being floored
Right.
by the
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah.
Because you're going from VHS to that, you're like, holy
Hmm.
moly. I have to rebuy everything now, don't I? Because
Yep.
I do. But going from that to Blu-ray, I mean, yeah, it was better. The sound was certainly better. The the picture, I mean, once I blew it up to an 80-inch screen, well, then
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I could see it.
And
But
then trying to go backwards back to DVD, that's where you really
yeah,
noticed
that's where you
it.
noticed it. Yeah, but you're not going to see that with Ultra HD. I just don't. I just don't. I just don't see. I
Yeah.
don't see that we're gonna get. We're not going. This is not the next step. Ultra HD, in
Hmm.
my opinion, is not the next step. This is just one of those things they're gonna keep throwing at us like 3D. Remember 3D? Rob remembers it. It's
Oh
dead.
yes.
Dead as a door now.
I think
All right.
Ultra HD video is going to take over whether anybody cares or not. It's just
Yeah,
going to.
it's gonna be there.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the audio side, I do have to really, really wonder. I mean, the one thing is, if the theaters keep going towards immersive audio and it becomes what both Dolby and DTS sort of promised, which is one mix that will be able to be played anywhere, then there's no reason not to include it. Like, that might be the one way that immersive audio survives, but how many people are really going to go ahead and trick out their
Redbox
system to do it?
still has more DVDs than Blu-rays.
Right.
Why
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that? That's because people have not adopted Blu-ray enough, and we think they're going
Yeah.
to adopt this other one.
Yeah.
It's not it. This is not the next thing.
Yeah,
I'm
5.1 audio really might be where it just settles.
I-
'Cause, yeah.
How many of us actually need 7 point? How many of us actually need it? We need 2 subwoofers and 5 speakers. Thank you very much.
Right.
We're fine. If you would like to put some on your ceiling, you're more than welcome to do that. But you're weird, and the rest of us are just fine with 1080p and this. Now, I know. I mean, I shouldn't be saying these things, but it's, to me, this is just another 3D. And I'm not gonna. If somebody wants to come at me and say, "I really want this. I think it's gonna be cool," I'm not gonna say you're a bad person for wanting it or for thinking it's cool. I
Well,
just don't agree.
that's the thing, right? If you are, I mean, I can't put myself in the same group you're describing. I'm in the quality snob group. I
Yeah,
will
for
put
sure.
myself there. like I don't care if it's on a physical disc. I would happily have like Kaleidoscape's download service where it's still completely
Yeah.
full quality. It just happens to be a download instead of a physical disc. Totally fine with that. But I really do want that utmost picture quality, and I do want immersive audio because I like it. It's fun. It's nice. So the
Now
question
that I
is,
have holes in my ceiling where this projector is, I might put some speakers up there. I could be convinced to put some height speakers in there.
right? Yeah.
I mean,
The question is, will there be enough of this niche group? Because I totally agree that I am part of a niche.
yeah.
Will there be enough of us to make it financially reasonable to provide us the content in that form? That's sort of I think really what Jay's getting at is like
Yeah.
this Ultra HD Blu-ray format, which can deliver all this stuff. Will it be economically viable, or will we just end up being stuck with streaming that isn't the best Ultra HD quality, picture quality that it could be, and immersive audio just dies, which is what you're kind of expecting. So,
Well, and I'm actually
that'd
expecting
be sad.
expecting us to have a bunch of 4K displays that we are absolutely not needing because we're not putting anything near a 4K.
Yeah,
It's
somebody's just gonna have to sell us digital cinema packages. Like, just give me the same digital cinema package that they get in the movie theater. Just sell it to consumers at the end of its theatrical run. Somebody has to set up that service.
I don't know, man. I almost really think that holograms or something like that is
Right.
the next thing.
Well, virtual reality, something. Yeah.
Well, something like that. The Oculus Rift and all these other things that are coming
Yeah.
out. But like we were talking about with the last guy with the headphones, then you have to worry about there being other people in the room where you're not able to interact with them because you're wearing this weird thing with the thing on your ears and everything else, so you can hear it. And I don't know that that's going to be it, but we'll see. I just don't think Ultra HD and Dolby Atmos and this immersive audio is the next thing. I think this is a flash in the pan. I could be wrong. You guys remember this podcast is the one that I said something that you guys should come back and go, "Ha, you're an idiot." I'm okay with that. My wife.
And I'll just say I'm scared that Tom might be right, because I don't want that particularly happen, but it definitely could be the case.
Yeah. All right, and it's the same guy, Jay,
Yep.
Or Jason, whatever. In regards to Dolby Atmos versus DTS-X, one thought that occurred to Jay is if the speakers can actually be mapped and utilized no matter where they are in the room, the way DTS is claiming, couldn't we just leave our surround sound and surround back speakers in elevated positions to get a lot of the height and immersive effect that way, rather than lowering all those speakers to ear level and having to use two pairs of in-ceiling speakers? That's more of an Oro 3D. Those locations are more of an Oro 3D location. So yeah, theoretically, especially the surround backs, if you got them really high, close to the ceiling,
Sure.
you could use those as
They'd be like rear heights.
if you like rear heights, which are probably the least probably effective speakers in all of the speakers, firing into the back of your ears.
Yeah, I don't really question that DTS's rendering engine is capable of doing all this. They'd never make that claim if it really wasn't capable. But the real question is, will the AV receiver manufacturers be able to implement this kind of true flexibility where somehow the AV receiver knows where your speakers are in angle and elevation and then can pass that information along to the DTS renderer? That I really, really don't think is happening outside of the $10,000 plus systems. At least not for a while. Maybe Yamaha could do it in like a $2,000 flagship or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I really question that.
Jay also wonders how important did I skip a question?
Nope.
Okay,
right.
tamper matching will be for overhead or height speakers. Is there really any way that upward firing? Okay, this is part of a different question. All right, so how important tamper matching is going to be for? How much material is really going to be up there is the question that I have. If there's not going to be much material up there, it really doesn't matter. The more material that's coming across, in my mind, the more important timbre matching is increased exponentially based on how much material you're getting. Pans left, right, top, bottom, left, all over the place. Yeah, timbre matching suddenly becomes an issue. If it's the occasional sound effect, if it's the one flyover, okay, yeah, I guess timbre match would be nice, but frankly, I just don't really see that being an issue.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about how the surround channels and especially the surround back channels in just a regular 5.1 or 7.1 setup, how mostly they're used just for ambient sounds and the occasional sound effect. And if you're going to skimp anywhere in your system, skip there, because it isn't hugely important that they timbre match. It's kind of cool if they do. I've always said that, but it's not tremendously important. Take that level and decrease that even further for
Yes.
the overhead and heights, because it's the same thing. All they're producing is ambience and the occasional sound effect. And if what you're mostly looking for is the, ooh, wow, that thing just moved right over my head effect, it's not terribly important that it really closely timbre matches. So I would say very little importance.
Yes.
That'd be my, yeah.
He also asks, is there really any way that upward firing reflect off the ceiling speakers could ever timbre match and create a seamless sound field? Very few speaker manufacturers have actually made Dolby Atmos enabled speakers or modules. In Rob's case, would a speaker designer like David Fabricant from Ascend even entertain the idea of an upward firing speaker? Frankly, upward firing speakers are completely stupid. Everybody agrees.
Oh, I don't agree.
They are stupid in that they only work in very specific situations that you cannot predict. So therefore, they're generally not adjustable. You have to be sitting in a specific spot, and your ceiling has to be a specific height. And God forbid if you have a ceiling fan up there and you wouldn't like to have it on sometime, right? Or that you have popcorn rather than textured ceiling, or God, what if you put some absorption up there? Then where are you at? They're dumb. Okay, they are. They are dumb. We talked about trade-offs when you're doing tweeters versus whatever else. This is a humongous trade-off. This is basically rolling the dice. The manufacturer's like, phew, I hope they buy it, and you're rolling the dice and saying, woo, I hope I can position it so that it bounces off the ceiling and hits me in the head. I mean, I play pool like an absolute, like a quadriplegic or something. I don't even know. I mean, I'm terrible. I'm like, I'm sure that I understand the geometry behind it, but when I hit the ball, it just goes in random spots. And this is the exact same thing. You're going to be trying to fire these speakers off the ceiling and hoping to God that they're going to hit you. And frankly, timbre matching is going to be the least of your worries at this point.
Yeah. I think they're a good idea that will never catch on. That's what I think.
They can't catch on because you're going to put them there and they're going to bounce off the ceiling and hit the person behind you, or hit the coffee table in front of you, or hit to the left of the side or the right. It's just no.
Well, what I really think is that anybody who is interested enough in immersive audio to even know that it exists is automatically the type of person who will go, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to find a way of putting in ceiling or speakers up high on my walls. Like that. Exactly. I think the Venn diagrams there have like no outliers.
Yeah.
Who are saying what I'm going to do.
The only people that are going to have speakers that bounce off the ceiling are not only, but the majority of them are going to be people who bought a box with a bunch of speakers in it, and they were Dolby Atmos enabled, and they didn't know what that was, but it sounded better than the ones that didn't have it on there. And then they're going to look at the weird speakers on the top. They're not going to have any idea what they do or what they did to do with them, and they're going to put them in there, and they're going to be kind of people that aren't going to notice when their water bottle is making a weird squeaky sound. So you really think that they're going to be hearing this stuff come off the ceiling and be all amazed by it? No.
Yeah, because I mean, this goes back to what Jay was saying about this middle ground of there's the people who won't care about immersive audio at all, and there's the people who will care about it a whole bunch, and basically nothing in between. Because the whole reason that Dolby came up with these upward firing speakers idea was they said, what about the market of people who have installed a 5.1 speaker system, but that's as many speakers as they will ever install. They will just never put physical speakers anywhere else in the room. They've topped out at 5.1. Well, we can still give them immersive sound by having upward firing drivers on top of the 5 speakers that they already have.
They didn't design the speakers right. They didn't design the speakers so that you could aim them. Right. They did not do that. So how are you supposed to take into account all the different heights of the room, all the different angles of the room? I mean, heck, a 20-cent laser pointer would have at least done something so that they would have fired to the ceiling, and you could have somebody hold a mirror up there and see where it goes. At the very least, they should have installed that. Press the button, fire the laser. Oh, there's a mirror. Comes right down. Oh, look at that. It's hitting the coffee table. Angle it differently. Oh, I can't angle it differently because it's not made to be angled. It's got one stupid angle.
But
it's dumb.
Yeah, I think that's where it completely fell apart, because anybody who fell into that camp of I've installed 5.1 and that's as far as I'm going to go, that's as far as they're going to go. They're not going to do immersive audio. And if they are someone who's going to do immersive audio, they're going to do it with actual physical speakers. So yeah,
I'm certainly I agree
crossover is
100% with Rob.
there.
If I'm gonna take the jump and install and get some height speakers or do something like this, that you're not gonna see me Googling Atmos enabled. That is not gonna happen. In ceiling, on ceiling, stuff like that.
Yeah, funnily enough, only the person who is the absolute most informed about this might ever even consider the upward firing speakers, because they would go to all the extent of making sure they're in the exact right position so that they could reflect exactly as they're supposed to. And for some reason, they can't install overhead speakers, which would actually be someone like me. Like, I would be the one customer for one pair of upward firing speakers that I might mount on my surround speakers so that I can have top middles. Yeah.
Honestly, I wonder if the companies that have designed Atmos enabled speakers, I wonder how many they actually produced. Like, I wonder if they just consider it like an advertising cost.
Yeah.
Rather than put it into an actual speaker. Like, let's take it out of the advertising budget. It'll get us in the news for a while. They'll be talking about us. We'll build, I don't know, 1,000. We'll do 1,000 of them. 1,000 of them. That should be enough, right? You think we'll sell 1,000? Because like, no. Well, let's go 1,000 anyways. That's a nice round number. That's what I think they do.
Yeah, David's question of, or not David, Jason's question of, would David Fabricant from Ascend ever create these speakers? Nope. Absolutely not. He never created bipolar dipole surround speakers, even when they were basically the standard, because he's like, he believes in direct radiating speakers. That's what he builds. That's what he decides. So no, there's no chance he ever would. And obviously, Atmos modules and upward firing speakers have not taken over the market by any means whatsoever. So I think what we have is what all we'll ever have, and it's not going to increase.
Yeah. In fact, if you want your Atmos enabled speaker, you better get them soon.
Yeah.
They only made 1,000 of them. All right. Blah, blah, blah. Jay, being an enthusiast, can envision himself buying a huge Ultra HD TV, 80 inches or larger, buying an Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, likely at an inflated price, to get the best possible audio and video quality, and setting up an immersive sound system with speakers overhead. But he thinks the alternative for most consumers is just a TV. It's built-in speakers and streaming. You see, I think that's too far separate. You're forgetting my group, which is all the people who are 5.1 or 7, 5.2 or 7.2. Hopefully, we're all 0.2s now. We're trying. And that's the group that I think is the bigger group than your group. Okay.
Yep.
So he doesn't think any sort of half measures will succeed. All or nothing, basically. What do we think? I don't agree. I just told you why. All right.
Yep.
And all this is related to all this immersive audio talk. Star Wars Battlefront on the PC will have a Dolby Atmos audio output option. Even though video games have been using object-based audio for a long time, this marks the first time a game for home release has expanded beyond 7.1 surround sound playback. So, yeah,
that's kind of cool. I mean, would anybody be setting up just a gaming PC setup with immersive audio, or will this be someone's home theater where they have a gaming PC that can connect to their home theater? That's an even smaller market.
That's not a niche. That's just they don't even get the niche.
I could do that, but
God, dude, can you imagine that, like on the 80-inch screen playing a first-person shooter like that? I mean, I guess it's done all the time. I guess I'd do it, but jeez.
I mean, object audio obviously they have been using it in video games. It's just that after they render where it's supposed to be positionally, they run it through a Dolby Digital or a DTS encoder so that it can come out in that form to your playback system. But it is object-based audio. So, why not have stuff go overhead? Stuff goes overhead in games.
All right. I want to end this podcast, but we have so many freaking questions.
A lot of these are just updates. I know we can hit Byron and Marvin for sure.
Oh, it's still an hour 45, 7 already. Byron is also wondering about the overhead speaker portion of immersive audio. He wants to know exactly how he will have to go about positioning in the overhead or height speaker installs. Dolby's layout offers large ranges of angles, and DTS is saying, put them anywhere you like. But how will we actually get the best possible sound field and imaging? Will it be similar to the trial and error of being towing in front speakers, but this time having to go up and down a ladder for each change? How is this going to work, and where should overhead speakers be aimed? Directly at the primary seat. I don't think they're supposed to be aimed at all. They're supposed to be sort of downward firing.
Dolby has consistently said they want the widest dispersion possible. They don't want the angled, in-ceiling speakers that are more directional. They're like, make them super wide dispersion, because what they're trying to recreate is the same experience you have in a theater where the speakers are way up high. So by the time they hit the audience, it's very, very diffuse, wide sound. So that's what they've been saying all along. Now, companies like Golden Ear, their speakers are not super wide dispersion. They said, well, what they found worked really well was they used their in-ceiling speakers that have fold and ribbon tweeters that are more directional, and they did aim them more or less at the primary listening seat, and they thought the effects worked very well.
For the guy in the primary listening seat. Everybody else.
Yeah, but even outside of it, because the whole idea of the overhead speakers is not to be as imaging pinpoint directional as your front three speakers. They're not supposed to be like front left and right speaker with perfect stereo imaging. They're supposed to give you the sense that the sound is above you and generally in that direction, because it's creating this hemisphere of sound around you. So if you imagine more like what it's like at the commercial cinema, where they're way up high and very diffuse, that's what you're going for at home. So it's not pinpoint imaging. That's not really the goal.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about towing in and all that other stuff, because you're not going for true imaging. You're just going for it's in that direction.
Yeah, just get your
another in a long line of reasons why I think that this is stupid. But go on. Marvin, like so many others, Marvin is very impressed with Jared M's theater. That's the blue theater that we've shared on Facebook. He's greatly upgraded over time. Marvin, we just want to know what projector Jared is using. It is the
Epson 8350.
Yay. There you go.
Yay.
Asked and answered. Is this the same Jared? No, it's Marvin. Is this Jared?
Well, it's Jared who was just mentioned.
Jared who was just mentioned. Wrote in wanting to double check on Lior's behalf that the 50 hertz null that Lior described in his room last week is really an audible null and not just a measurement. Jared said he has personally overcomplicated things before by relying on measurements rather than his own senses sometimes. And when he sent that email, I responded back, that's a very good question. Is he actually hearing the 50 hertz null or not? But at the same time, Lior wrote back to thank us for discussing this theater last week and to share an update. He has repositioned his subwoofer to the right side of the room and away from the corner, which helped a little. He then realized that if he moved just a foot to either side on his love seat, that he was out of the null. He was sitting dead center in the middle of the room.
He was in that null, man.
That's the bad seat. It's supposed to be the good one. It's a bad one. So so to answer Jared's question, yes, he was definitely hearing it. He decided to simply use a pair of recliners rather than his love seat, so that both seats will be on either side of the null. That's the bad boy seat. Now, for right now, he does plan to get a second subwoofer in the future, but we assume that SVS must have shipped to Israel since he had an SVS. That's not the case. So it's a longer and more expensive purchasing process for him. But in the meantime, he has also managed to slightly improve things by rerunning Odyssey and making sure he takes multiple measurements with the microphone starting in the middle, but then remaining about 1.5 feet away from that starting point with the rest of the measurements. He had in the past tried the weighted approach where he took multiple measurements all in that middle location. But that just made the null even worse. So he's happier with all of his adjustments for now. Now, remember that weighted approach is what I used to kind of advocate because it made sense to me. But when we talked to Chris, he said no.
Yep.
So listen to the guy that actually works for Odyssey and not me.
Yeah. And, even though that seat that's right in the middle is not a great seat to actually be sitting in, just in terms of that 50 hertz null, it is still where you would start. That would still be measurement number one, because it's setting all the distances for your speakers. And that is where you want to put the microphone first. We're not worried about a 50 hertz null when we're setting distances for our other 5 or 7 speakers, and even the distances for the subwoofer. That's not a problem. So you're still starting there, but then you're using,
because that's the middle seat. If you think about it from between the two speakers. So you don't want to set your middle seat off to the side just because that's where you actually sitting. You want it to be the middle seat.
Yeah, but all the other measurements, we're using spatial averaging. Odyssey is looking at the group of measurements and saying, oh, hey, am I seeing the exact same hump and dip no matter where you put the microphone, and therefore I can equalize that? Or is it different from spot to spot, in which case now I know that's a reflection with the root problem. I don't want to equalize that because it's going to be different from seat to seat. So that's what the spatial averaging is doing instead of weighting it all just to that one spot.
All right. Alan continues his theater construction. He is now painting his room. He says he would rather rewire his whole room and fish wires through his walls and ceiling than ever do sheetrock repair again. Did not have fun with that. Working with rock sucks, dude.
Mm-hmm.
All my friends who do it are like, it's terrible. And I've done it before, and it is terrible. It is messy and sandy and gross, and it gets everywhere, and you feel like you're eating.
And if you're not experienced at it, it doesn't necessarily turn out as smooth and flawless as you would have hoped for. At least not on your first try.
Yeah. Anyways, he's taking our advice and ordering a pair of SVS PC 2000 subs, which we will position directly across the room from one another. So we suggested he's got Jurassic Park in mind as his first demo, and the disc that he should have at the ready. Well, Pacific Rim is always a good one.
Sure.
I mean, if you're going to watch movies that are just bassy, that one will shake the crap out of your room.
Transformers: Age of Extinction.
Yes, but you just want to fast forward to that one scene and
Just
break
the
the
one
disc,
scene.
throw it away. What a big pile of crap that movie was.
And I always like putting on the Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. I mean, who doesn't like those movies? And they have some great bass in both of those series. So
Nemo. What have I just watched recently that was pretty good?
The Incredibles has good bass too.
The Incredibles is pretty good. I think
it's a great movie.
It's a great movie. Yeah, I watched that new Keanu Reeves movie. What is it called? John Wick.
John Wick.
Yeah,
Atlas.
that is the perfect movie for Keanu Reeves. I think he says like 5 words the whole stupid movie, and none of them were whoa. So I don't know if that had a great bass or not. I don't know. It wasn't that great of a movie. Anyhow, that's off topic. No further specific questions from Ellen this week, but he did want to know how we learned of all these nuances about audio and products. Well, we read up on the products before we do the podcast, and the rest of it, we've just been talking about it for so long, at least I have, that I just absorbed it.
Yeah, you have 8 years of on-air podcast and plenty of time before that when you were into home theater.
I was a forum guy.
Yeah, so. I'm the same way. I go right back to middle of high school. I was getting into home theater, so it's just accumulated over time.
He also Alan also wanted to share another inexpensive, it's a $50 portable Bluetooth speaker option, the Bailey Bluetooth speaker from Malik.
I think it's Malectronic.
I don't know.
I think
it looks like a cup. It's like a cup.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's one of those ones you could actually put into a cup holder. I'm betting that would work.
Yeah. Yeah, those things usually sound like garbage, but at least it's inexpensive. $50, not too bad. Speaking of speakers, the Trivolo, the BenQ, the electrostatic panels, the Bluetooth ones.
Oh yes, yeah.
I did a little bit of testing with them. I haven't really done a lot, and I have not finished these headphones yet either. I'm sorry, but I did a little bit of testing when I put them in. The first thing I did is walk past them, and there's a definite sweet spot.
Ah. Sorry to Cesar, we just don't agree.
I mean, it generally sounds pretty good, right?
Right.
The real problem is that the electrostatic panels handle the treble, right?
Yeah.
And if you get in like one spot, there's a timbre difference.
Right.
Now, if you walk out of that, it sounds the same everywhere else.
Right.
Just about. Yeah. But that one spot has a timbre difference that's noticeable, like as I walk across a room.
I wonder if Cesar thought we were saying, like, once you get out of the sweet spot, you just don't hear anything anymore.
No, yeah, we're not saying
because I could see how he might have actually been under that impression, or that it changes to a sound that is like unlistenable or something like that. It wasn't that. It's just that there is that sweet spot, and it's very small where the magic in the terms of the imaging happens, and it doesn't happen anywhere else.
The speaker's very light. It's small. If you close those panels, they vibrate against the thing, so you got to keep the panels open when you're listening to it. There's 2 woofers in the middle that fire forward, and with 2 passive radiators on the sides, which acts as ports basically. I heard a lot of distortion from those center woofers. I didn't think that the mid range didn't sound very good at all. But the top end sounds pretty good. They don't get super loud. They max out pretty early. I think that's because the electric.
That's pretty common.
Yeah, but it sounds pretty good. Does it sound $300 worth of good? I don't know yet. I'm gonna do some more testing on them, but I I heard some just the thing that's really holding me back is the very first time I turned them on, I was noticing there's quite a bit of distortion coming from those drivers in the center. So yeah, but those cost $300 and
not 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you want to end, but Alan's and Jose's are literally just updates, and
All
then
right.
the
So
rest of the
we already did Alan, and now we're going to do Alan.
Right.
Different spelling. So there's
Yes.
Alan, A-L-A-N, and A-L-L-E-N is this Alan.
True.
Right. He wanted to thank us for posting the link to the MiniDSP tutorial for using Room EQ Wizard to run 7.1 test tones via an HDMI output. The computer he was using before does not have HDMI, but his wife's laptop does. So it says time to negotiate, aka begging and pleading. Let him install the REW software and use her laptop for this very important purpose. Just send her a link on how to erase her browser history, and she should be fine. She should be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Room
EQ Wizard won't harm anything on your computer. It'll be fine.
I'm not worried about that. I think she doesn't want to know what he's been looking at. Jose has this is a guy whose Rythmik sub broke, and he was impressed with the customer service. Has his Rythmik SFV15 HP back up and running. He says he's impressed with the quick service by Brian over at Rythmik, and he's glad he was able to swap out the amplifier himself, so he didn't have to ship back the entire 130-pound subwoofer for repair. I guess
that would have sucked.
I've been like $100 or something. I don't know. That's a lot of money. Anyways, he includes some photos. I don't know if we're gonna. I guess we'll put those on Facebook or something. But those are some massive capacitors in there.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I hadn't actually seen the inside of the current amps that Rythmik is using. Normally, you take off the plate amplifier for a subwoofer, and it's an EI transformer that's in there, and there might be several components, but it's all Class D.
Yeah.
So usually it's quite small, and not
this
really
Class D to me.
This looks like an analog power section at the beginning. I'm sure the amplifier itself is Class D because there aren't gigantic heat sinks on the
that's true
on the amplifier section itself, but the transformer is this gigantic toroid, and then there are these 4 huge capacitors on there. So that has got to be an analog power stage at the beginning of that thing.
It's got some power. Yeah. So Paul and Cesar again, and Adrian, and we got some questions from Fred and Bill since then.
Yes.
I believe that's
right. Yeah, those came in just today.
All right.
Jay sent another question too. Jay/Jason.
Oh, he did. Jeez.
Just to me, I think. I don't think he sent that one to you, so you wouldn't.
Yeah, I
didn't
get that one. So, anyways, we will get you guys next week. Now.
Yes.
Again, if you can come up with a new tagline for us that we like, you'll be listener of the week. If you would like to become listener of the week some other way, let us know how you did it, or give us a donation. That works too. Regardless, if you have some questions, let us know. You can ask at Rob at avrant.com, Tom at avrant.com. Rob's at First Reflect over on Twitter, and I'm at avrant_Tom. www.avrantpodcast, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, and G+ Tom Andrew or something. I don't know. All right, I'm really tired, so I'm phasing out here. It's 2 hours. Dang it!
But the actual time of the day is not
so much sometimes. I blame you. This podcast never used to be so long.
I did trick you into doing those last 2. So that was my game.
It's not that I don't want to do the podcast. It's just that I feel like 2 hours is too long for people. I would not want to. All right, anyways. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
After party starts in a few, guys. And it's going to take me a second to hang up on you guys. Hold on. Broadcast. Bye.